Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Yeah.
Troika Game is working on a title, Kyle. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Every time you mention it, someone will reinstall it. And every time someone reinstalls it, they are told to use the unofficial patch or the game is unplayable. Or if you get an angry nerd, they might tell you to use the true patch gold instead. Or if you run into a purist or a speedrunner, you'll be told the official patch 1.2 is fine for the most part for a vanilla playthrough. But who is right? What exactly is the correct way to play Vampire Bloodlines? A reasonable appeal is to go with what the developers intended. They designed the game after all, and their version and collaboration is what made the game come into fruition. You want to be playing the game developed by Troika Games called Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Developers make video games with intentionality, by which I mean they have a plan in mind for the experience of the player. This is not a wild concept, as we praise video games for this sort of thing all the time. I love the atmosphere in this game. The level design is awesome. This music fits so well. The controls feel so natural and responsive. The story touched my soul and taught me humanity. Even if put together with cardboard and tape, or accidentally all the right people work on all the right aspects and it comes together perfectly, I think we can all agree that video games are designed with intention on the part of the developers. They have an experience in mind for you.
It's a really great license because, as you know, if you've played any Troika games in the past, we like really in-depth worlds that react to what you do, and the White Wolf license was perfect for that. It came with the ready-made, all the clans you could play, and basically they already had a lot of depth. It was a little easier than starting from scratch and creating our own world.
The kind of brutality of Quake like there was it was a taste that a lot of people really did like. It wasn't so much explicitly designed for that, but it worked out that way. And that's one of the interesting things as we look at game design today versus the old days. A lot of people fall into a sort of nostalgia trap about saying, well, the games I grew up with were the greatest games ever, and you see it with music and movies and everything. And I tend to be much more optimistic about the state of things today, where the amount of effort that goes into the modern games is extraordinary. Just the detail and all the quality on all the different levels. But there is a little sense of games are so expensive to make now, sometimes in the hundreds of millions of dollars, that they do have to be conservative. So they have to be careful to make sure that they've got something that has a broad mass appeal. And I think that is the upside of some of the older games, where they might have a little bit more of a distinct flavor. They weren't sort of focus grouped to death in the way that some of the more modern games can be.
And sometimes people get extremely mad if you don't do the intended video game things, like getting mad at speedrunners for using glitches, or casual players for using a rewind feature or save states. There's a split among gamers who are comfortable or not deviating from the developed path.
We hate our lives doing it.
You also get assholes trying to form new intentions not present in the game because it fits what they like better. Like Smash Brothers players.
Especially, trip into the grab. Wow. That's the worst thing ever. Trip into a grab. Worst feeling.
Mutsa King just turns back in.
Nah, he's
laughs.
like,
Yeah, wow.
He's just, are you kidding me? He's not even trying. Hand is off the controller right now.
I've never really understood the mindset of sticking strictly to what the developers intended for a game, because some of my best video game experiences have been finding ways to make a game do something unexpected. I enjoy finding a sequence break, a way to cheese a boss battle, or a faster way to accomplish or even skip an area of a game. Sure, I can get salty if I lose a multiplayer game to some dumb glitch, or a speedrun to an unexpected game behavior, but I'd wager that my enjoyment of such things greatly outweighs the salt.
What? What?
So I think it's fair to say that not only do developers have intention when building their video games, but players also have intention when engaging with that video game. So, if we are intending to play Bloodlines as vanilla or as developer intended as possible, what did they intend? Well, first let's take a look at the Bloodlines launch, and then we'll get into the unofficial patch and the true patch gold.
And every killing is a treat.
After that, we had only 2 weeks to make payroll, which, if you know anything about the game industry, is a virtual impossibility. So I called Scott Lynch, who was at Valve at this time. Thank you, Scott. And he hooked us up with Activision to make a role-playing game using the Half-Life 2 source engine and the Vampire license, which Activision had at the time. Side note here, the main lesson to take away from this, never ever develop a game with a third-party unfinished engine. We knew that at the time, but we had no choice. Like I said, we had 2 weeks.
The Vampire Bloodlines launch was not great. Official patch 1.1, which is what released with the CDs, released also the same day as Half-Life 2, and is often described as being a broken, unfinished, glitchy, buggy, and unplayable mess. And they aren't totally wrong.
Holy shit.
Unfortunately, Bloodlines suffered from an abundant number of bugs and scripting errors. In the retail release of the game, several quests were severely bugged, and in some rare cases, unsolvable.
To quote David Mullich, who was Activision's producer on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, "We set a couple of hard deadlines on the game's development so that Troika could spend enough time on bug fixing. But the problem was that the team had done so much wheel spinning because they were working with an engine that was still in development that the game eventually ran over budget. Activision increased the budget and extended the deadline several times. Activision declared that the version was good enough to ship, but had to sit on it because the game could not be released until after Half-Life 2 had shipped, because Valve wanted their source engine to debut with their own game. That restriction turned out to be a blessing, because Troika convinced Activision to spend more money on additional development work in the meantime. I don't think it was enough to cover the entire team's cost, because I heard that several team members agreed to work without salary because they believed in the game so much. So, the team produced another code release candidate which went through another 3 weeks of testing, and that's the version that was used as the Gold Master. However, the game would have greatly benefited from an additional 2 weeks of polishing before launch. Even one more day of bug fixing would have made a noticeable difference. But Activision just had to say, "Stop! Enough already!" at some point, as the game had already gone way over budget.
They decided to release Vampire the same day as Half-Life 2, which was as soon as contractually possible to the minute. I'm not a businessman, obviously, but I don't think that's a good idea.
Kind of ironic that this game was supposedly ready to be released months ago, and it's still full of bugs.
Yes, that makes us less sympathetic to the developer's plight.
I mentioned before how the engine was unfinished. Valve was understandably continually changing the engine so that it would work really well for Half-Life 2, be the best engine they had for Half-Life 2. But as you can imagine, the needs for a Half-Life 2 type shooter and an RPG are very different. That, along with Valve's pace of production, which was relatively unhurried and unconcerned about time and budget, at least as far as we were concerned, or compared to us, led to no end of issues between us and our publisher. I will repeat that. The fact that they kept changing their engine and we couldn't move faster than them led to issues between us and the publisher, not between the publisher and Valve.
Barely able to get official patch 1.2 out, Troika went defunct along with any support for the game's future. A fix for the game was conceptual from the very beginning, and this is where the unofficial patch and True Patch Gold come in as the two major community support groups, for a vanilla playthrough of the game anyway. The now long-dead drama between these two groups was over the topic of this video. Which patch offered the authentic, developer-intended Bloodlines experience? The unofficial patch, maintained by West 5, an analytical chemist and Bloodlines enthusiast, or the True Patch Gold, released by Tessera, a self-described sexaholic sleaze muffin and Bloodlines enthusiast, who has made some really great forum posts.
Brian Mitsoda. If by any wild chance you are reading this, then I would love to have the opportunity to have an email exchange with you. As one fantasy horror writer to another, that is. Shh. Relax. I don't want anything from you, I promise. But I would love to do what H.P. Lovecraft used to do and conduct some harmless, casual discourse with fellow kindred spirits. Could be fun, dude. What? Hey, no, I'm not gay. In fact, I'm so hetero that it frightens other heterosexuals. You should see them grabbing their crotches and running into the night, especially. and frightens homosexuals even more, but for reasons that only they understand. Well, okay, I understand why, but I'm judiciously sidestepping, honestly. So, chill out, dude. No hidden agenda here. It's just that truly intelligent people are often difficult to connect with on the internet. And even if you do, half the time they're hopeless head cases, or they believe that their professional standing credentials somehow prohibit them from being normal and amiable human beings. I think you might be pleasantly surprised if you elect to reach out and respond to one of your most ardent fans. Hey, I can hope. Your writing style is so similar to my own that I'm beginning to think that we may have been twins, separated at birth.
The unofficial patch was first started by Dan Upright, and although I couldn't find an exact date, somewhere around 2005, Wesp5, who really led the project into what it is today, believes that Dan patch was out even before official 1.2 was out. Today, the unofficial patch is the definitive way to play Vampire Bloodlines. With over 15 years of maintenance and restoration work, the unofficial patch has a community of people behind it that have all contributed to a giant amount of changes from where the game was at launch. So much so that the unofficial patch was split into two versions, a basic patch that keeps the game vanilla, and a plus patch that includes all of the restored content. Heck, if you buy Bloodlines on good old games, it comes bundled with the unofficial patch. The True Patch Gold was started by Tessera, Acrimonious, and others within the community who felt that the unofficial patch was becoming more of a modification of the game due to all the changes that were being made. It began as a fork of the unofficial patch, but then due to some backlash, they restarted from scratch, sparking what is now a long-dead drama around what was the superior install. On the TestMage forums, there is a thread that's been updated up to version 7.5 over the unofficial patch, which lists 1,233 changes from the base game. The list was exhausting to try and read and just made my head spin, so instead I just looked for my own changes within whatever was the current unofficial patch, which happened to be 10.9. This is unofficial patch start. This is what it looks like. Look at this gigantic building. Now we switch back over to 1.1. He's like moving more.
No expression.
He wasn't as static that time.
Keep walking, freak. Seriously, get out of my sight, motherfucker.
Right now. While I might tend to agree more with the test mage crowd on these changes, they're really just being dicks about it.
Here's the way I look at it, Schu. In this world, there are intelligent free thinkers. Sadly, they make up the minority of the human population. Also in this world, there are conformists. I often call them cud-chewing sheep. Sadly, they make up the majority of the human population. No matter where you go, and no matter what you do, you will always find yourself outnumbered by stupid, irrational conformists. These are the people who believe that the majority is always right, despite the fact that, historically speaking, the majority has almost always been wrong. But they don't care, because to those people, it is much more important to belong than it is to be right. It's almost as if they are saying, we don't care if we're wrong, just as long as we're all wrong together. The larger Bloodlines community is no different than the larger world community in this respect. The VTMB community, like any other community in this world, is dominated by clueless, cud-chewing sheeple, for whom it is more important to do what everyone else is doing, as opposed to doing what is actually best for them. So it should come as no surprise that these nitwits have largely jumped aboard Wesp's bus. Just as it is no surprise that, like anyone suffering from mindless mob mentality, they tend to circle the wagons and become abusive whenever any mention of the true patch comes along. They are habitual conformists, and by definition, most conformists are psychologically insecure individuals, hence their behavior. Well, to hell with them, because I didn't create the true patch for the unsophisticated, mindless sheeple out there. I am in fact so disgusted by people like them that I don't want them to use our patch. They simply do not deserve it. But within the larger VTMB community, there is also a select subgroup of intelligent, free-thinking purists. We could care less about going along to get along. Thus, our perceptions are not being clouded by groupthink. We simply want to play VTMB without bugs, without having a bunch of arbitrary changes imposed upon us by someone else. Those are the people who tend to prefer using the True Patch Gold Edition, and I am proud to have been able to serve their needs.
Tessera, thank you, and I agree. I would say that the only difference between you and me in this matter is you call them sheeple, and I call them conformists, which means the same damn thing, basically. But these conformist idiots remind me of religious zealots. They don't just quit or go away. I just wish the sheeple would open their goddamn eyes and ears. If they did, Wesp would be nothing but a bad memory and good riddance. I'll be the first to admit that Wesp is an okay modder and that he has some damn good ideas, but they don't belong in a patch, and above all else, his lies are pissing me off. The bad thing about that is, I'm not even involved in this patch ordeal. I'm only an amateur modder who is trying to figure out how Python works in his favorite game. And you have offered to help anyone who asks. And Wesp just keeps everything to himself. Talk about a control freak. He just wants to keep the information all to himself without helping anyone except for his tight little group.
Wesp is German. He lives in Germany. And if we have learned anything from German history, it is that they seem to believe that if you keep repeating a lie over and over again, then eventually that lie will become magically transformed into the truth. Wasn't it Adolf Hitler, another German, who famously—
You what?
Well, shit. After talking that much smack, you better hope the True Patch Gold lives up to the dream of Bloodlines as released, but only with fixes then, right?
If you're new to town or just
What's going on with the ceiling? What the fuck?
The only girl who will spend a night with you
Whoa. Why is it doing that?
Looks like the boards are lining up.
Ooh, looks like the ceiling there. Here she is.
Aren't you
See? Here she is.
Well,
That's why you're able to do the skip. So you get her to stand here like this. She has to be standing facing you this way. And then you jump on her head. She does a combat roll. And then she walks over to the elevator to be set up later so that you can do the elevator skip. Because you don't ever talk to him in the 1.1 route. And he's a requirement for getting up this elevator for this button working. This button doesn't work until you talk to him and he lets you up. So instead what you do is you talk to her, and then you open up your inventory during the cutscene, and you walk into the elevator and you send it up, you get out, you exit and come back in, which starts the argument. You can just like dance around and chill for a while because you can't skip it. So yeah, this is like a huge requirement for the 1.1 route, because if you can't freeze her in place with the blood doll, I love how she's just standing here like this. She's just so creeped out. But the only reason that this works is because you run in during the fade-in, and you talk to her immediately while Jeanette's trying to run up to talk to you. So she has to be here, and in True Patch they had her like over here dancing or whatever. Those graphical errors with the roof are really annoying. Like, look at that. Just straight up see a lighthouse over there, like right there. That's cool. Let me see if I can just convince them. Oh god, what happened to the roof?
See that you don't attract any more attention. I've said all I need to for now.
Excellent. In the meantime,
Oh.
consider yourself a welcome guest in my barony.
What?
Welcome to Hollywood.
What? Cool, I'm permanently stuck. Why did that happen? Tessera! Like, can I show one? Oh, like, what's happening there? See that one on the bottom? Why does it become black like that?
Tame yourself. One thing is certain. Power is inside. No one on this coast will be able to challenge my rule. Not even the Camarilla. You've earned the right. Open the sarcophagus.
And after all that drama, the True Patch Gold itself isn't even official 1.2 with fixes. Moving NPCs around like the Blood Doll in Santa Monica ruins any chance that we're gonna speedrun on this patch. And especially with the graphical errors, which admittedly could have been my fault when setting up the patch, although I didn't encounter that with any other patch that I've used now or in the past. I don't know what this offers over something like the unofficial patch or even the official patches. So neither the unofficial patch or the True Patch Gold really offer the vanilla Bloodlines experience. Now certainly there's an argument to be made as to whether or not the official 1.1 and 1.2 patches are even worth playing, but as someone who is approaching the game as a speedrunner, it is something that I have to take into consideration. Speedrunners like to make a big stink about playing on original hardware and on platforms that the developers intended. If you aren't playing on an authentic console with real RGB video pumped through a CRT, and you go for that Zombies Ate My Neighbors world record, then you weren't really speedrunning. Sometimes communities will decide on their own to make quality of life improvements by allowing runners to skip inconsequential parts of the game, like a long intro cutscene. Or they'll allow the use of third-party patches or modifications because otherwise the game is unplayable, or your Bioshock Infinite. But generally there is an understood adherence to playing an official release or version of the game. Any percent categories, which are the most common form of speedrunning category, is all about beating the game as fast as possible, which assumes reaching an ending designed by the developers. The quintessential idea of speedrunning is beating a game in one sitting as fast as possible. Vampire Bloodlines speedrunning for any percent uses official 1.1, the way the game was released on CD, because of an exploit called the experience glitch. When inputting your character's beginning stats before the game's opening cutscene, after spending all of your points, you can return to the clan selection menu, select the same clan that you already input the points for, and be granted the starting points again, allowing you to keep inputting them until you can fill up all of your character stats. Such as allowing for level 10 lockpick, which allows for some of the larger skips in Santa Monica, such as skipping all of Mercurio's quests by going straight to the Ocean Hotel via the sewers, which is protected behind a level 10 lockpick. Using the unofficial patch or the true patch gold is a lot slower in most places than the official patches. This is because in order to ensure better consistency for the game's scripts, it appears that a lot of timers were put on things to stop them from happening too quickly, such as the nightclub elevator in Santa Monica. The unofficial patches do have a sewer skip route, which could be faster than the Warren skip used to skip the majority of the sewers in the unofficial patches, but I highly doubt that it's enough to make up for the rest of the game being slower. The changes made in the unofficial patches has also led to people suggesting incorrect route changes. One of the newer, bigger skips in the game is jumping on top of a blood bat just before it enters your body to jump high enough to skip the majority of Grout's mansion. Before this, it was reported that you would be able to do a crouching jump from that bookcase onto the railing, but this turned out to be only possible in the unofficial patches. We're not really sure why or how to account for the changes, a smaller invisible wall, or maybe slightly higher jump heights, or blood magic? So if I haven't been using the unofficial patch or the true patch gold for speedrunning, you might be wondering, well, what have you been using then? Turns out, I've actually had a solution to the vanilla question of Bloodlines for a while now. I've been using a patch or addition of the game which only edits 4 files in total to make the game function without changing anything from how it was in its original state. The source engine used in Bloodlines is a really early version, which works entirely within the confines of a 32-bit program, so running it as 64-bit can be an issue. When the Vampire executable checks to see how much memory your system has upon loading, it expects a 32-bit integer number as a result. However, running it in a 64-bit environment returns extra numbers, which it sees as a negative flag, telling the program that you have a negative amount of RAM, or less than 15 megabytes.
Oh no, there it is! Available memory!
No.
Rich, we have less than 15 megabytes of memory.
This can also occur on 32-bit systems if you have more than 2 gigabytes of RAM, since Bloodlines will loop back to negative beyond numbers of 2 gigabytes. To fix that issue, we use an edited engine DLL file, which is hex edited to fix the base problem. This way the game can expect larger numbers. Another issue the engine has is how it loads models and textures and objects and stuff like that, because it's done in a brute force fashion. All of your memory is filled up with dummy textures, and when once finished, the game takes the total result from that and figures out how much memory it needs to use. If you have more than 2 gigabytes of RAM, then a negative number is returned. Since the source engine was designed to work with different hardware setups automatically to meet the needs of whatever it's running on, the game decides to blur most of the textures to an extremely low detail, since it believes you have negative amounts of RAM, and therefore a very crap system. To fix that issue, we use a hex-edited Shaper Rapid X9 DLL so that the program knows that you can have more than 2 gigabytes of RAM, and then displays the textures correctly. Finally, Microsoft turned off the SEC DRV service, or Safe Disk, because of security exploits. Unfortunately, Bloodlines and many other games depend on this service to load. To fix this issue, we use the Vampire executable from the Unofficial patch, which has fixed the program to run without the need of the service. And it also has a no CD patch included. Last but not least, we replaced the Vampire DLL. I believe it fixes needing admin permissions, and also fixing a crash from when you start a new game. Just replace it, just trust that it works. It's fine, don't worry about it. Now, none of this stuff is unique. It's been available to everybody, everywhere, all the time, for years now, actually. You just had to know what to put together. The Vampire executable is from the Unofficial patch. The engine and Shaper Rapid DLL files are ones that I hex edited myself, following some instructions online, but you can also use the ones from the Unofficial patch as they do the exact same thing. Last is the Vampire DLL. I think this is from Steam, or it might be from the Unofficial patch. I honestly can't remember. Just trust it, just replace it, it's all good. It's fine, don't worry about it. But with those 4 files, you will be able to get 1.1 or 1.2 official functionally working. Now, of course, your mileage will vary. One important thing that you will need to do is switch your max FPS from the default of where it is at 300 down to about 60 or 90 so that you can interact with objects in the game, such as physics puzzles or doors. Doors still work fine and everything, but if you walk into them too quickly while they're opening, you can get permanently stuck inside of them, which isn't fun. But this will provide the most vanilla Bloodlines experience that you can currently have. I'm calling it the absolutely unofficial True Patch Platinum, or Speedrun patch for short. You can find the patch on my website, lurk.mo, or check the description of this video for a link. My hope is that this video will provide folks with a better understanding of the Bloodlines launch, why people claim the game is unplayable, and what your options are for experiencing the game beyond just what the Unofficial patch offers. Also notice for, if for whatever reason you're like a Dumbo or something, but having brought up 10-year-old drama, please just let things be dead. Like, don't somehow use my video as an excuse to go harass someone for some reason. Just, it's over. Long over. Long over. It's just funny at this point. That's it.
Hey, we're just having a goof.
If you did like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all those YouTube things. That'd be cool.
You're not subscribed to press a button! Press it!
Remember, wherever we go, it is the blood of Cain which makes our fate. Farewell, Vampire.
I'm so depressed I don't know what I'm doing. I have not got a clue.